Okay, so this is my standard gunpla building setup. I've got a Fisker's cutting mat that I use for my building, and then, of course, we need tools. This is my first tool set, but it's going to be glutted with a whole bunch of extra stuff. I've got model glue, because you don't want to use crazy glue for everything, because that stuff is nasty. This is a part separator. A lot of people who do stuff like Legos will have a tool like this, especially when the Legos get too tight together and they can't separate them. Instead of going for a butter knife, you get one of these. As you can see, mine is already chewed up from separating parts that I put together incorrectly or out of order. This is the main tool. This is a nipper. It's a one-sided cutting nipper. This is a really cheap one that came with the set. And the set also came with a relatively decent X-Acto knife with a bunch of extra blades. Some really crappy tweezers, which I have since upgraded with nicer ones that will stay shut until you squeeze them. And they are a lot easier to use. And also some bits and bobs and other things in here. Like these came with files of different shapes and sizes. And I keep this kind of for all my extras. I've got extra hand parts in here that can be swapped out. Cotton buds, because you always need these for everything, especially when you're doing painting or if you're panel lining. These are pieces from stands, so you can adjust the height of a gunpla model when you put it on there. And some extra decals in here that I've yet to use or just have left over. A lot of them are generic, just have numbers, things like that. And just weird bits and bobs, like pieces that are too small, don't want to get them lost. Screws. Though most of these don't use screws. And then also, my advanced tools. This comes in a fancy case. Are my more expensive clippers that have a lot more sharpness, and as you can see, they're actually adjustable to a point, and they are one-sided clippers, and they cut a lot more cleanly and evenly, and that's important because when you're cutting parts off of runners, if you leave little nubs behind and you're a perfectionist, it will drive you crazy. So, and also I have a set of precision sanding sticks that go from start at 400 grit and go all the way to 7,000 grit. And that is for cleaning up nub marks progressively smaller and smaller. And then you can actually polish them so they look almost like they came out of the packaging that way. So these are the tools that I usually use. And we'll now get them in action by pulling out the kit that I've been working on for a while. This is the RCX7602 Guncannon from Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin, which is a retelling of the events that led up to the original Mobile Suit Gundam series, which started in 1978. So this is kind of like a recent story that takes place right before the original series. It's got updated graphics and animation and things like that using modern techniques because the original one came out in the 70s, so it's very dated today. And this particular mobile suit is a Guncannon, which is one of the three main hero suits from the good guys, quote unquote, of the Earth Federation Space Force. There's the Guncannon, then of course there's a Gundam, and there's also the gun tank. And the Guncannon is similar to the Gundam, except that it has a head that has a single visor instead of two eyes, and also has mounted guns on its shoulders. Now let's open this up. As you can see, usually it comes with a rather large manual. It shows you examples of what it looked like when you're done, information in Japanese and sometimes in English too, on actually how to build the thing. Now this is known as a high-grade kit, which is where the HG comes in. that means that it is an entry-level kit. I know that HG as high grade sounds like it would be a high grade, but well, they are high grade, but they're not as advanced as some of the other kits. And as you can see inside here, there's several runners. This is a polycap runner, which are used for joints to help the mobile suit move and pose. These are notoriously easy to lose if you pop them off the runner and it can go flying across the kitchen or over your building. And they're also very soft, so they can get bent out of shape really easily. Most of the other runners usually come in pre-formed plastic like this, usually PVC plastic separated by color. You'll see most runners will have maybe 1 or 2, 3 colors on them. Usually it's just 1 or 2 colors. And you can see color separation depending on the model will depend on how much time and energy you want to put into doing it. And of course, this model also comes with a stand that I can build and a sticker sheet. These are just regular see-through decals. So I have started this kit and I have been working on it for a while now. So this is what I've done so far. You can see I've got the head, the torso, and the waist. And you see there's a lot of articulation here. You can move the head up and down. You can give it a little forward-back movement. This turns. Some will turn all the way around. Some don't because of things that go falling off when you try to move around. And these models are notorious for little bits and pieces falling off like the visor just did. And that's why you want to use the glue sometimes. If it keeps falling off, I'm going to have to glue the thing shut. As you can see, it's got some rotation in the waist. It also has a little bit of an ab crunch too, which is pretty cool to see. You don't usually see that. And the waist armor here, it flips up in the front and the sides to accommodate for movement of the legs. And like most HG kits, the butt flap here does not move. You can also make the front flap move independently. Right now, it is in one piece, which means that if you try to move one side, both sides will come up. You can actually nip the center there so you can make one side come up while the other one doesn't. I usually don't do that because because I'm notorious in making my models fall apart, and I figure let's probably get as much stability as possible to stop them from falling apart constantly. So that's what I do. And also you see in the back here, there are details such as the backpack. And if you look closely, you can see a peg there, which is where one of the shoulder-mounted guns will go onto. And there are also places in here where other weapons can be mounted. This is a pretty modular kit. You can decide exactly how you want to fit it out. So I figured I would show the process for putting together one of the arms or legs. And so this is pretty much the way it's designed is that you don't need to know English you don't need to know English or Japanese in order to follow directions. Everything is numbered and lettered. You just go in order. Sometimes there will be English along with Japanese here. If that is an issue that it's not for some people, they will get the Google Translate app and just hold it over it, and you get a reasonable facsimile of what it means. I mean, Google Translate app is not the best of Japanese. You get some interesting English going on. But anyway, we will figure out what we're going to do first here. You'll see there's some pretty cool images. And we will turn to the arms. Here we go. I usually fold it over like this, so it's not in the way. Okay, arms. So, as you can see, it says ×2, so we're going to build both arms at once, at least for this section here. And you simply just look at the numbers listed and letters listed in the instructions here, and you find the corresponding runner. Like these are all D2, D2 15, D2 21, D2 16. So you're going to find the runner that's labeled D2. I usually keep them in alphabetical order because it's easier to find them when you're constantly flipping back and forth through them. D1, and D2. So, and I'm also going to need the A1 and A2 as well. But first, let's start clipping. So, I'm going to need two of everything here. So I'm going to need D221. And so you look for the number 21 on the D2 runner. Here it is, D221. And as you can see, there are two pieces labeled D221. And when you're cutting out these pieces, a lot of people, when they're first learning or when they first start out, they will just get real close to the nub and just cut real close as possible. That is actually not the best way to do it because that can leave stress marks on the piece itself, and those are really hard to get out. So what most people do is they will get a cheap nipper, like I have here, and they will trim a little farther in so that you have some leftover sprue on the piece, like that. Sometimes it'll fall off when you're doing that. And then what you do is you then take the tougher nippers you have here, the sharper ones. You get in close and you just kind of shave off what's left, like that. As you can see, there's not much of a mark left over. And if you see a mark that drives you crazy and you can't deal with it, well, you can take your old X-Acto knife and give it a little bit of a scrape, like that. And if there's anything left over after that, you can take your sanders and you can sand this down. Now, this is going to be an internal piece. It's not going to be needed to be sanded down because it's not going to be visible from the outside. If it was really rough, I would sand it down to make sure it's not going to interfere with the ability of the piece to move, especially with a joint. So this is obviously part of the arm joint, but this looks like it's going to be fine enough. If you're the kind of person who knows it's there and knows that's still going to bother you, then go ahead, sand it off. Who cares? But anyway, we need 2 of those, so I'm going to do the same thing with the other D221. And again, I'm going to trim it a little bit past where it's supposed to come off. And usually you need to hold these steady as you're trimming them because otherwise they'll go flying. I've lost plenty of pieces on the floor. Spent lots of time on my hands and knees trying to find them. Usually someone else has to find them for me because my eyes are awful. And then you just do a little snip there. A little snip there. See, the little sprue went flying. I usually put my little sprues in a pile here so they don't go everywhere. Then I can clean them up when I'm done. So that's 2 of those. And the next thing I need a D215, D616, and an A1 and A26. So I'll get off the D2s first. So D2, 15, and 16. Let's get those out. I usually try to keep my pieces organized. So when it doubles like this, I usually put them on different sides of the cutting mat. So D2, 15, and 16. So you find it on here. D2, 15, and 16. 15 and 16 in a row. So get these guys trimmed. This is cathartic, but sometimes also mind-numbing as well. These are the 15s. That's the 16. You have to be very careful because you can easily get mixed up when you're doing double sets of pieces, especially if they all look kind of similar like these guys do. It's very easy to mix them up, which is why I keep them separated like this, because otherwise I've ended up putting pieces together that should not have gone together and messed up kits. So, I mean, these aren't too expensive. These HG kits are nice and cheap. They're usually about $20 or so. But on a more expensive kit, like a master grade MG or a real grade, an RG, those are extremely expensive, or they can be extremely expensive, because they're larger and they're more detailed. The master grade kit is a 1/100th scale kit, which is a much larger kit compared to the HG, which is a 1/144th scale kit. And the real grade is also a 1/144th scale kit. However, it is also much more detailed than a typical high grade. It's a lot of people, a lot of gunpla model makers look at an RG or a real grade kit as like a scaled down master grade kit. So that kind of level of detail in a kit that's that much smaller, which makes it a lot more challenging. And there are other grades of kits as well. There's an even bigger one. It's called the perfect grade kit, which is massive. We're talking it's a 1/60th scale model, and those things are hundreds of dollars, easily hundreds of dollars. They're also the most ornate. They have a ridiculous number of gimmicks and moving parts. They also often have LED lights built into them, and they are super cool, and I wish I had the money to get them, but I don't. So I stick with HGs and MGs and RGs. And there's plenty of stuff to do, even if you just stick to the lower size kits. Okay, so I've got these all trimmed off, and I also need this peg piece here, which is an A16 or also an A26. This is why you need to keep your stuff organized. There's my A1 and A2 is right at the top, so I'll pick the A16 off, and this is 6. There it is. So I will just trim this guy off. Again, using my rough cutters first. and then trimming that up with my close cutters to make it a little more neat. And hold on to the piece as you trim it, because otherwise it can go flying. You can bend the piece. I've done all kinds of damage like that. Now, switch to the trimming up. And I'll just trim this piece off here. Trim this piece off here. And if you're good enough, you can almost kind of make the sprues go into the same pile if you're angling well enough. Make it kind of a game. See, that one's kind of close. And then you get the little chip here. And you just give them a look. Make sure they're all in decent shape. So good. So listen, now it's time to actually put it together. So you just follow directions. These can be kind of obtuse. If you're not good spatially, you can have problems sometimes. But I mean, if you just match the way they look on the instruction sheet to how they look in your hand, so you can see this one is showing that this part of the piece is to be situated like that, because you can see the peg is offset here. There's more room on the left than on the right, and you can see that there. So D221, and then you put D216 behind it, which is, I believe, no, not this one. This one, because you can see it has pegs, and this one has pegs. So this one goes in here like that. This goes in the bottom peg. And then this goes like this. This goes in that peg. You can see. And then this piece sandwiches them together so they can't go anywhere. If you look carefully, it goes down like that. And then you put them together. And this is probably, of course, fiddly. So, oh, there you go. So you can see it will fit together on one side. And then you put this side in. Sometimes it will tell you what order to put the pieces in. Other times it does not. Most of the time it doesn't. Now, there you go. And you can see now we have a joint here. This is meant to bend, and it's a double joint too. This is probably the elbow joint that we just made. And engineering on these kits has gotten a lot better over the years. I mean, now most people will expect things like double elbow joints in arms and stuff, arms and legs and stuff like that. So now we just repeat that process with the other one. And this should go probably a little quicker, since now we know what I'm doing. So we take this, and we put this in here. Make sure this points that way. And actually what I'm going to do, since I learned from the first one, that this one will actually hold things in place a little bit pretty well. So this goes through here like that. Make sure you're facing everything the right way, or otherwise you're going to be in a nightmare trying to fix things. Then this guy, go in there like that, making sure it's going in the right way as it well. And then you put the back piece on. Make sure that's going the right way as well. And you'll see it will look right as well as bend properly. So that's the skeleton of the arms. Next, we move on to this next one here. You got a little arrow there, shows you where to go. Looks like we need A1 and A27 and A1 and A210. And this is going to be for both of them still. So, and you can tell because you've got the A27 in parentheses under the A17. So it's saying using both pieces. So go back to A1. Snip off the 7. Right here. Use the little ones first. You notice different plastics have a different sound when you trim them. Like this blue plastic is a little tougher than the gray plastic. And when I was trimming the gray plastic, you really didn't hear anything. This one will give you a better snap. Let's see. Also, since I'm here, I'll choose A110 as well. This little kneecap looking thing actually is probably a shoulder. Oh, sorry, an elbow cap. 2 and 3. And then we'll just do the same thing with the next runner, which is A2. We'll just take another 7. Here, you can hear the snap. It's a little more decisive. And that is a sprue. This does not belong here. Get out. And then A210. It's another elbow looking thing. Okay. Now comes the trimming part. Make sure you get everything. And you should be gentle when you're trimming. You don't have to be too forceful. Because again, you don't want to leave stress marks on what you're doing, especially on these pieces. These are going to be visible on the model themselves, most likely. So what you want to do is you want to trim them carefully without too much force. That way you have less cleanup work to do afterwards. Because I will probably have to maybe sand these guys a little bit just to keep them looking nice. And if you're really into it, you can also do things like paint your models afterwards. So that will actually make your sanding lines really disappear. That is definitely not going to be for tonight, obviously, for many reasons. But see, what you do is you just, like I said, you kind of just scrape it off a little bit until there's nothing really sticking out. You are likely going to see some discoloration like that. You can feel for bumps with your thumb. And then if you're careful and you're not going to cut your own finger off, you're going to shave them down a little bit. Sometimes it's easier to do than on some pieces than others. On a spot like this where it's an edge, it's usually easier to clean them up than when they're on a flatter spot. Sometimes Bandai makes kits that are undergated, which means that their gates, which are the parts that you cut to remove them from the runners, are set in a space where they're not visible once you put the model together. Undergating is awesome. I wish everything was undergated, but obviously sometimes it's just not possible because of the way those injection molding machines work, which is, I don't know how they work, but apparently it's not easy. These runners have been getting more and more complex over the years. I mean, Bandai's been making these kits for a very long time. So, and they've gotten more and more complex, and the technology has gotten better and better, obviously. So what I'm going to do, but it still needs help, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to take some of these guys out of here. I'm going to start with probably a mid-range, maybe a 800 or 1,000, because these are not like super crazy. So I'll start with an 800. I'm going to go to 1,000, and then I will polish up with a 2,000 and a 3,000. That should probably be enough. Actually, no, I'm going to go from 3,000 to 5,000. Let's pull these out. 3 and 5. So, what you do is you grab the piece you're going to buff up. You look for the spot. Sometimes you might need to use your tweezer to hold on, because these parts are small, so it's a pain in the butt. It's good to hold on to a spot where it's not going to show up, because you don't want to pinch the plastic too hard. And if you can't do that, then just be gentle, obviously. So let's see here. This is just a little bit. And you just be gentle. And at first, you're going to look, you see like, oh my God, I'm making such a mess. This is so awful. Why did I choose to do it this way? This plastic is soft. It comes off really easily, especially when you're starting with an 800 grit. Then you go to 1,000 grit, and you smooth off that edge that you just cut off here. And you're going to have a lot of dust left over. Then when you get to the higher levels, like the 3,000 to 5,000, you'll see you'll be more of buffing it. Then it's less abrasive, so it's going to buff out nicely. And eventually you can almost get back to that factory shine. As you can see right there, this is pretty good. It's, unless you get really close, you're not going to be able to tell there was a shine job put on there. So, see, we do that. Does this one look good? This one is a little rough here, so I'm going to start. You don't always have to hold them either. I mean, you can always put them on the ground like this and just rub along it. That's sometimes easier for pieces that have spots that are hard to get to. There we go. 1,000. I usually want to go in the same direction every time when you rub, but I'm awful at doing that, so I usually forget. I get it with this one piece. But yeah, that's better. As you can see, still a little bit of shine there. If I was really serious about this, I would go down really deeper, but more for showing how these things go put together more than anything else. And I could always take it apart later and put it back together and do all kinds of things with it. But let's finish these arms up. So now we take the finished arm joint. You position it the way it's supposed to be positioned, according to this. You take this piece, you match up the shape. There's a little notch there, and then you just slide it on, and this notch should go not there. Make sure, oh, there's 2 notches on this thing. Does that fit? This is where it fiddles. There you go. And you can see now that it's snugly on there. And it looks right too. If you put it on the other way, it would have looked wrong, like I was doing at first. And sometimes it's hard to tell which one goes where. So, try that again. And you'll know because it won't set right. This one goes in easily. And as we thought, these are definitely little elbow pads. So these go on. As you can see, this little cross there, and that will fit into the cross shape on the back of the elbow here. It just goes in, just like that. As you get it wrong, there we go. You see now, this is starting to look more like an arm. This is the upper arm here. This is the elbow, obviously, and this is going to be the lower arm. So let's see what's next. Looks like over here we have this piece, A1, 8, D2, 13, and A1, 9, A2, 9. So this is going to be the lower arm we're going to be building now. So again, we're going to cut off a whole bunch of these pieces in doubles. So first we've got A1, 8, and A1, 9. So find 8 and 9. Luckily, they are next to each other. They try to print these guys in a way that the numbers flow more or less logically. That you can't count on that all the time. Then you just snip this guy here. So those are the A1s, and then A2, the same exact ones, they're just on a different runner. That's pretty typical. You'll have the runners are alphabetical, A, B, C, D, and if you have one runner that has multiple pieces, like duplicate pieces like we have here, it's usually A1 and then A2, or B1 and B2, so on and so forth. That's how they organize the pieces there. So we've got these cut off, and then it's going to need a D2, 13 in the center as a linking object. Here we go, we'll go to D2. And D2, 13. And here we go. And there are 3 D2, 13s, which means there probably going to be another one somewhere along the line. Right here, it just loses one. So one for this side and one for the other side. Just cut off in tandem like this. As you can tell, this gray plastic is a little softer than the blue plastic. Which is why you don't get such a satisfying snap when you cut it. Great. Now for the second trim. And you can see when I say stress marks, this is what I mean by stress marks. You can see how the color is white when it's originally blue. That's because these trimmers are a lot less sharp because they're meant for heavy duty work. And if I had trimmed this close to there, then you would possibly seen a big white stress mark right there on the plastic itself, and that would be really ugly. This one's all you see is this teeny tiny little stress mark that will come out. And there's actually a little bit of a nub there that will come out with some cleanup work. If you're really lucky, hardly get anything at all. And everybody has different methods and different strategies on how to trim. When I first started, I didn't have any of these tools. My first model I put together with an X-Acto knife, and that was it. So I was basically sawing through these little gates with an X-Acto knife. And my first model was just filled with crazy nubs everywhere. But you know what? I've gotten better since then. It's been about a year and a half now that I've been working on Gunpla models. And they're a lot of fun. They are obviously time-consuming. And they require a lot of attention to detail, a lot of patience. And also, if you want to up your game, quote-unquote, you need to invest in higher fidelity tools and things like that. Like I originally just bought the first tools I had were that little kit that I showed you earlier. It just came with a couple of those tools, and then I expanded by getting better and better tools as I went. I even have a little magnifying set that you wear on your head as a headband with a built-in light so that you can get really close and personal when you're doing things like really small pieces or putting decals on. Because my eyes are awful to begin with, and working on these things can make them even worse. So I decided that it's cheaper to buy one of those things and have to get new bifocals. So that's what I did instead. Now you can see I kind of trimmed this guy down a little bit. It's almost gone now. And you have to be careful because if you go too hard, if you go full hand with these guys, you can definitely dip into the plastic and shave off way too much than you were supposed to. And you'll end up losing bits of the plastic. Ooh, that hurt. See, you have to be careful with these things. These are sharp. Bleeding. Happens. If you don't poke yourself once or twice while you're doing this, are you really doing it? It's a love bite. That's fine. Anyway, we see here that I can do the same thing on this one. Just gonna trim a little bit. These guys love to fall off on you. There you go. For this, I'm just going to do some rough trimming here. I'm not going to get too into it. Except maybe this piece. This piece you could kind of use a little bit of a... Yeah, because this is bad enough that I would use some of my sticks on. So you want to just do as little as possible because a little bit goes a long way. And it's highly visible. You see, if I had just gone straight down, you would see it would be a whole big channel dug in. That would be awful. It'd be a lot harder to make clean looking. So let me just go progressively cleaner and cleaner. 3,000. This is more polishing now. And then 5,000. Now you can see that it's polished away. There's barely any mark left. But you can also see that it does alter the plastic shape a tiny bit. So you don't want to go overboard. And that's why I'm going to leave it like that. Now let's assemble these guys. Okay. Now take A1-8, this guy here. You can see there's a cutout there on that side, so that's the side you go. You slip that into D213, like this. No, like this. And there are pegs on the inside that you can slip this into. It usually only goes one way. And then you check to make sure you're not doing it right. You're not doing it wrong, rather. And these go in like this, I assume. Yes, you see? Clicks into place when you get it right. Excuse me, I'll take a drink of water because I'm choking on all the cat hair in here. Oh, that's better. Now, put this ring on the bottom here. This goes on, I believe, just like this. Or not. Perhaps. Nope. See, it only slides one way. So you have to figure out the right way to do it. If I was paying better attention,